Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody know that the stream is going on right now. Okay, before I get started with tonight's topic, I want to thank everybody who has gone out and picked up one of my books. Thanks to everybody buying books. I have had a record January with 57 sales so far, and I just need 3 more sales to get to 60 sales and can have a major milestone as related to sales. So, again, I want to thank everybody for going out here and picking up my books on Amazon. Thanks to you, I have had, again, a record month. And I really want to thank everybody for going out here and supporting my work. Now, I also want to take a minute to talk about my comic Esteem No Good Deed, which is now available on Kindle. Now, before you had to pick up Esteem No Good Deed in the back of the paperback version of Esteem Blast from the Past, but I'm offering a more affordable version for readers who just want to get the comic all by itself. Now you can get the Kindle version on Amazon.com for just 99 cents. That's just as much as it costs for the digital version of John Haynes' A Conversation with Death. And for $1, you get a full comic story. So if you guys would head over to Amazon.com and pick up that copy of Esteem No Good Deed, I would really appreciate it, because this is going to be the start of me trying to branch out into comics. And this is the first comic I have published so far. So I really want to continue publishing comics. I want to venture into comics. I have a comic project I'm planning for later this year, and I'm hoping that the artist will be available to do it, because this story, I think people really enjoy. It's a follow-up to John Haynes' A Conversation with Death. So I want to get that comic out here. Everything is just about ready to go with the script, and all I need to do is just wait for the artists to be available, and we'll be able to go out here and get this comic to all you readers out here. Now, with that perfunctory finished, I'm going to get into tonight's topic. Now, tonight's topic was inspired by something gboot2786 presented to me on Twitter, and he showed me a video of these so-called international black YouTubers that they're talking about for their so-called YouTube Black. And I found it interesting that in these so-called unique voices, there weren't many African Americans in that group. It was focusing mostly on foreign blacks. Now, them focusing on foreign blacks is very troubling, because it seems like they don't want to hear the voices of foundational black Americans, nor do they want to promote foundational black Americans as the face of black people. Now, this is all about controlling the narrative of black YouTube. And as I have stated before in many of my videos, those who control the money control the media, and those who control the media control the narrative. And it seems like what they're trying to do on the YouTube platform is try to change the narrative on the Black sector of YouTube. And what they want to do is change that narrative by making the whole idea of Black fit into the framework of people of color and make an effort to minimize the issues of foundational Black Americans. Because as they play up these so-called Black voices, what they do is downplay the voices of foundational Black Americans. And when they do that, what happens is the voices and messages of foundational Black Americans get minimized, and we're seeing a lot of minimization of the voices of foundational Black Americans being minimized through things like these YouTube shadow bans. Now, these YouTube shadow bans don't take a channel off the platform, but they prevent many Black channels from getting views and expanding their audience. And I believe that by doing that, what they're trying to do is, again, trying to slowly push the Black voices off the platform, because what they want to do, again, is control that narrative and have people only following one set of Black voices on the YouTube platform and have those voices representing Black people. But what they want to do with those Black voices is have them be some controlled opposition, because in many cases you have a lot of these foreign Blacks. They really don't understand the issues that foundational Black Americans are presenting on the platform. Now, when YouTube first came out in 2005, 2006, I believe, it was a major platform that allowed Black men to equalize the playing field, because before your YouTube came along, what happened was most of the voices that we heard as related to Black media were those of selected Black women on platforms like the Oprah Winfrey Show, and most of the viewpoints we saw presented to us were primarily gynocentric and focused towards Black women. So most of the media we saw was always presenting the Black woman either as one, a victim of no good Black men, or as a single, successful, well-educated Black woman who could not get a man. And they always presented everything to make the Black woman some sort of victim of no good Black men or some other issue, but they never gave us a balanced picture where we got to hear from those Black men. Now, rarely on occasion, we would have a brother like a Michael Baisden come out here with his own self-published work, but oftentimes that work was gynocentric as well, because the only way you could push media on their platforms was if you were promoting their ideas and concepts, like that of the so-called quote-unquote good brother, or you played the stereotypes like the player or the hustler. So you didn't get a really rich and broad picture of Black culture or the Black experience on most television media. All you got was either the hood, or maybe you got a positive show from a guy like Robert Townsend or a Bill Cosby or a Suzanne DePass, who gave a Sister, Sister, and Smart Guy. But oftentimes it was hard to get positive images of Black people in media. And YouTube practically leveled that playing field overnight, because as Black men started coming on the platform, we started seeing them, by their very presence, refuting many of the narratives that were presented in mainstream media about Black men. And as these Black men came on the platform to tell their stories, they began to refute many of the narratives that people like Oprah Winfrey and Alice Walker went out here and promoted for years. So we started to see black men slowly chipping away at many of the narratives that were presented about black men being deadbeat dads, being lazy, being incompetent, being trifling, being no good. We had black men speaking in their own words and telling their stories on the YouTube platform. And as those black male voices started to talk more and more, it started to grow into a larger and larger audience. What happened was we started to see the mainstream media getting very uncomfortable about the narrative, and we started to see the start of these, what they call the gender wars. And the gender wars were all about trying to silence those black men who were presenting a counterpoint to many of the narratives that had been pushed in the black community for over 40 years. So at the time, it was over 40 years. They wanted to push these narratives as related to the black man being this lazy, no good, deadbeat loser. But as these men started telling their own stories, we started to see a more balanced picture. And as we started to see more and more men telling their part of the story, we started to see these black women turned into seeing the truth about them. And that really upset a lot of the black women. And it also upset a lot of these investors who wanted to continue getting the black female dollar because they profited from the black female dollar. Now, that's the reason why we have had all those efforts during the gender war to go out here and have these guys' channels flagged and have them taken down because they wanted to continue receiving the 97% of black dollars as related to revenue coming in. And what's going on, Gboot2786? Glad to see you here. You were the one who inspired me to do this stream because you were talking about shadow bans. So I'm really, this is a topic that you inspired. So I really wanted to talk about this one because this narrative that's out here, it's really, they're trying to change the narrative on the platform. And that's why they're trying to silence many of the black YouTubers who are talking about certain issues. And again, this started with the gender war because they were refuting many topics as related to the Oprah narrative Oprah Winfrey pushed out here about no good black men. And we started to see a lot of pushback as related to class action lawsuit, and then YouTube pulled back. But now we see them trying to start all over again, trying to silence the black voices on these platforms. D-Wood, I'm going to do a video on Cicely Tyson maybe tomorrow for Sunday. So that's something I'm planning on doing. I want to give her her own video because she was a class woman and she deserves a really solid video that pays respect to her because she was a sister who stood up for us and stood proud and presented a positive image of black womanhood. I mean, she deserves a truly respectful video, just like I tried to do for Tiny Lister. I mean, Tom Tiny Lister, I tried to do a tribute to him. Glad to see you here, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare. Glad to see you here. I'm going to be talking about controlling this narrative on YouTube. And again, what they really want to do is get us focused back on that old gynocentric narrative because they know that the black woman controls the purse strings inside of the black economy, and they want to keep those 97% of black dollars flowing to these white and non-black businesses, and they don't want to see any change into the economy. And that's why you have this push to try to push most of the black channels by foundational black Americans to the background and push the channels of these foreign blacks to the foreground and promote these as so-called black voices This is all about changing the narrative on the platform and having us focused not on serious issues that are related to foundational Black Americans, but having us being entertained by these foreign Blacks who don't understand the issues that most foundational Black Americans deal with in this country. Now, your foundational Black Americans, like Black men, have been using the YouTube platform to present a counterpoint to many of the false narratives that have been presented about Black men, and to also talk about the issues that Black men have struggled with in the real world. Now, many Black men out here, they have talked on this platform about the lack of fathers in the Black community. They have also talked about men's issues like not having a father. They have talked about the lack of male life skills provided in Black communities. And they've also talked about the long-term impact of single mother households on the Black family and even on their personal lives. And it seems like there's always an effort to try to silence those Black men when they want to talk about those issues, because no one wants to hold the Black females who raise these boys accountable for siding with the feminist movement and going out here and supporting the welfare state. So nobody wants to talk about that part, but they always want to talk about how these women were so downtrodden because of no good Black men. But we also don't want to talk about the other part of it. And that's quite troubling, because people need to get both sides of the story so they can come to their own observations and try to find the truth in between both messages. So this is something that a lot of people don't really want heard on this platform, nor do they want to hear about there being hard-working, working-class Black men out here like myself, who want an opportunity and can go out here and do something, but have been denied by many in the job market who have erected things like the HR brick wall. Now, this HR brick wall was created by your white feminists and Black women to keep Black men out of the job market and deny them an opportunity as related to getting employment, because what happens is many of these women are caught up in their emotions about no good Black men, and what happens is they wind up trying to keep other Black men from getting opportunities because they still have issues with some man they had years ago. So these are things that are not talked about on mainstream platforms like your Oprah Winfrey's or many of your gynocentric shows like The View. They don't talk about these kind of things, but Black men have talked about these things on YouTube, and there's an effort to try to keep them from talking about these kind of things. Moreover, there's an effort to try to keep Black men and other Black people from talking about things like the Black family and the importance of Black fathers. And there's been an effort to stop Black men from talking about Black empowerment. And all of these are messages that cannot be talked, that are not talked about in your mainstream media. And it seems like they don't want them talked about on your social media either. So whenever you have a Black man who goes out here, or a Black woman who starts talking about these issues, there's an effort to get those channels either taken down or try to get it where they, if they're not violating these community guidelines that arbitrarily change every other week, what happens is they do these shadow bans where they just keep that channel from appearing in search engines, and they keep that channel from appearing on different parts of the site. So this channel can't get any views, and you can't get notifications for that channel whenever that channel comes out with a topic. And again, this is about trying to silence these Black voices. And the reason why they want to silence these Black voices is because these Black voices are not towing the party line. And these black voices are not telling people what the mainstream media wants to hear regarding black people. It's like I've always said, people want a smooth world, and a lot of these whites in media want a smooth world where they see a certain kind of black people participating in a certain kind of behavior. So what they really want to see are black people who are participating in behaviors that they consider to be quote unquote black. And if they see those quote unquote black behaviors, then they have no problem with those behaviors. Captain Cisco, a smooth world is a phrase I took from Dr. Robert Glover after reading his No More Mr. Nice Guy book. And in a smooth world, it's a world with no problems, no conflicts, and no obstacles. And for your white supremacist, a smooth world is a place where your black people are at the bottom of the world and your black people are participating in stereotypical behavior. So for many of these white people out here who are white racists, white nationalists, and many of these even SJW woke types, they want to see a certain kind of black person. They want to see a black person who is out here participating in certain kinds of videos, and those videos make them feel comfortable about black people being at the bottom of the world. So they like seeing black women fighting in fast food restaurants. They like seeing videos of black women fighting in the street. They like seeing videos of black women getting beat up by Arabs and Chinese store owners. They love seeing videos of black women twerking. They love seeing videos of black men smoking weed. They love seeing videos of black guys fighting in the street. They love seeing videos of black men bickering and arguing. And they love seeing videos of black men going out here, going back and forth with each other, calling each other names. And they love seeing videos of black men going out here, roasting each other, cooking each other, taking things personal. They love seeing black people acting ignorant on these platforms, and they love being entertained by that kind of content. It's only when black men and women start using the platforms to educate themselves and empower others that we start to see that they have a problem with the content on those platforms. That's when we start to see people talking about violations of community guidelines, people talking about hate speech. But when black people are out here participating in self-hating behaviors, then it's perfectly fine. That's what I find to be quite interesting when foundational black Americans are out here being clowns and buffoons. It's considered perfectly fine, and everybody's okay with that. But the other content where you have black men and black women showing how we're articulate, intelligent, how we're presenting ourselves as intelligent, critical thinkers, that's not considered content that meets the community guidelines. And this is considered offensive to many. And that's, again, quite troubling because this is the kind of content I would think people would want to see regarding black Americans. But I think one of the big problems is it scares people because we're starting to see, one, black people who are not puppets out here doing as they're told, and two, we're seeing black people who can go out here and think independently and freely of themselves, and three, we're seeing some black people presenting points that don't fit the gynocentric narrative that was presented by your Oprah Winfrey. No, when you start to see black people starting to think and speak for themselves, that's where many of these people who control these platforms start to have problems with those content providers. They have problems with them because they are speaking their mind, and they're not telling these people who control these platforms what they want to hear. And what these people want to hear is black people being clowns, black people being buffoons, black people always with a joke. It's always, they don't want to see black intelligence, nor do they want to see black people talking about black excellence. Those are two things they really don't want you to see a lot of, but they have no problem with you seeing, a black man sitting here talking about how many black women he's had, or a black man sitting here talking about how he's going to get all the women's, and they have no problem with that stuff. And they have no problem with the guy talking about no good black women, or a black woman talking about no good black men, or some of these swirlers sitting here talking about how they're going to get themselves a white boy. None of those channels are of any threat, because all of those channels present the content that make your racist and your white supremacist comfortable and make him feel secure about his place in the world. And it also makes your far leftist SJW also feel equally comfortable, because these are not black people who are talking about building businesses or talking about participating in behaviors like group economics to go out here to create black-owned businesses that will compete with theirs. No, they don't want you to hear or see those types of videos, because those types of videos, they may inspire someone to go out here and start supporting black-owned businesses like my SJS Direct Imprint, or go out here and start talking about building a business or starting a business. Nobody wants that type of content up here. But if you've got a guy up here drinking hot sauce straight from the bottle, or a guy with his malt liquor review, that's the kind of content they don't have a problem with, because it fits the stereotypes that make many people feel comfortable, and it provides the entertainment that your white racist and your SJWs find to be entertaining. They have no problem watching a black man sit there and talk about, Colt 45 is better than St. Ides. They have no problem watching that type of stuff. And that's the kind of black content they want to see on these platforms. But when they start to see other black YouTubers talking about group economics, black empowerment, and talking about controlling our image, that's when they have a problem with us. And that the reason why they have a problem with us is because we are making media that does not fit their narrative, and the media they want to have out here is stuff that fits their narrative. And this is the type of stuff they want to see is like when I was watching the video that G-Boot had shown me. I'm going to try to put a link to it. This YouTube Black. This right here was what they want you to see are these foreign blacks, and they want you to see these foreign blacks, and they want you to see the foreign black in a positive light, but then they don't want you to see the foundational black American and see the foundational black American in a positive light. So I see so many, I'm going to leave a link to this video so you guys can take a look for yourself. But they want to go out here and talk about all of these different black people. But again, why aren't we talking about black Americans in this way? I mean, there have been black Americans on this platform ever since its inception, but nobody wants to talk about them over at the YouTube offices. I mean, I'm a guy who's been producing, again, positive videos and producing videos that talk about other aspects of the black community nobody ever even talks about. Nobody talks about the black sci-fi community. Nobody talks about the black fantasy community. And nobody talks about the black goth subculture. Again, foundational black Americans who present a completely different voice. And they don't want to talk about those but they will go out here and import blacks because what they want to do is take advantage of them the same way they took advantage of John Boyega and many of the actors on these CW shows who thought they were going out here promoting diversity, but were being used to promote racism against Black people. Because what they want to do is, again, play their game of divide and conquer, take the naive foreign Black and make him believe he's or her is talking about diversity and inclusion passively, but aggressively use them to be able to push narratives as related to foundational Black Americans. Now, Far Side X, what year did so many foreign Blacks be started? They've always been a part of America, but the problem is that what happens is the white supremacist uses them as a buffer so that they can push narratives about Black Americans. And that's something that has been done, again, like with John Boyega, for example, in Star Wars, what they wanted to do, because John Boyega didn't understand American racism the way your Ray Fisher did. He couldn't see that he was being played. I mean, Ray Fisher knew what was going on, and he was trying to call it out, and they were trying to make him look like a bad guy. And the whole thing is that your John Boyega didn't know what was going on as related to things. So, and John Boyega didn't know what was going on, so they took advantage of him, and they practically had him as being a janitor, had him being presented as a bumbling, stumbling idiot, and had him being presented as a clown. And your John Boyega didn't know what was going on, but your Ray Fisher, he knew what was up, and that's one of the reasons why they don't like to hire foundational Black Americans on these platforms, because foundational Black Americans, we're going to call out racism because we know where it is. Elvin, you can start out John Haynes with The Temptation of John Haynes. That's how you start the John Haynes series. So that's the first book. And then after that, you can pick up Man Who Rules the World, A Conversation with Death, and then you can go from there. But John Haynes starts with The Temptation of John Haynes. I'll leave a link to it in the chat. But that's the book that starts everything in the SJS Direct Universe. We got 53 likes, 54 people in the chat, 18 likes. Let's get the likes up. Come on, guys. We can put those likes up. And while we're putting the likes up, you guys, I would really love it if you would go out here and put something in the Cash App so I can continue doing streams like this and continue doing shows like this. And Computer Robots, I talked to a Black Canadian, and he's told me about racism that goes on in Canada. And there was a Black Goth YouTuber. She talked about the racism that goes on in Canada. So a lot of Black Canadians know about the racism, and they know what's going on, and they know what's going on. But the whole thing is they don't want us talking about that narrative because, yeah, they do stuff like that, Anthony Dixon. They do stuff like that. They mess with your comments. They mess with your stats. They mess with your streams. Like I tried when I was trying to do the one on the Capitol building that kept going out. I had to literally do that stream 4 times because they don't want to hear Black voices on these platforms, and they only want a certain kind of Black voice on these platforms. So they really don't want you to hear certain points and talking points because they want everybody to follow in their footsteps, like I said in the Spellbound novel, and like in that ragdoll dance entranced, following what they consider to be quote unquote Black, and they want us all following down that one road, producing a certain type of content that states a certain viewpoint about Black people. So you always notice that never does a twerker get their channel flagged or taken down. Never does any of these Black women who talk about no good Black men get taken down, and they sit there and talk many points that practically hit into the hate speech zone. I mean, when Kobe Bryant passed away a year ago, we had a lot of these women coming on here practically saying things that I would consider to be hate speech, but they're allowed to stay on the platform and with no strikes, no flags, no sort of reprimand whatsoever. I mean, they have stayed on here talking about how said all sorts of things about Kobe Bryant that were practically hate speech, but a black man who presents a counterpoint, they want to have that black man taken down. And again, that shows how it's all about controlling the narrative on these social media platforms and making sure that these platforms feature a certain kind of content as related to the black viewers. So they want all of the black viewers to have a certain kind of programming and have that programming all follow a same sequence, similar to what we saw back in the 1990s, where almost every book that came out of publishing houses was about these single, successful, well-educated black women who could not find a man, or these slave stories about some black woman. You usually got that. And again, the reason why we got those books is because white women controlled the publishing industry, and they wanted a certain narrative about the black woman, and they wanted that narrative about the black woman to be one that was negative because they wanted the black woman to be under the black man, under the white woman. So what they wanted to do was control the narrative there. And while many black women were celebrating these books, they didn't understand that the narrative was one that was about programming an idea in your minds that you could not find a good black man, but that quote unquote good black man was somebody created by a construct of Madison Avenue in Hollywood to create an idea of somebody you should go out here and look for, who didn't exist and could not exist because they created the HR brick wall that prevented educated black men like myself from being able to access the job market. So you were trying to chase this well-educated brother who had this six-figure job, but there weren't many of those black men to get those six-figure jobs because many, after they graduated college, ran into a wall and could not even get into the door because they sent out these black women in HR and these white women in HR to keep those black men from being able to get hired. So they were pushing a narrative and had black women on a hamster wheel chasing somebody who didn't exist. And then as they were doing this, they were selling them these books and had guys like your Michael Baisdens and your Steve Harveys out here selling them this idea of they could do different things to get this good man, but this good man could never get out the gate. And again, they rigged the game to keep the black man out of from competing. And he was already there, but he could not get to the door. Now, I was an author back then. I was trying to get my books out there, and all I got were rejections. And I didn't understand until, Gonzalo Lira presented it in a video talking about how white women were controlling the publishing industry. And then I started to understand why we couldn't get any black male voices out there. And the reason why we couldn't get any was because they had these white women controlling the narrative, and they wanted to have a certain type of image that kept black men out of the dialogue and kept them off platform. So they didn't want them there, and they didn't want these types of stories out there where black men were refuting things. But YouTube, when it was invented, one of the flukes that came out of it was black men were coming around and refuting many of these narratives and many of these twisted ideas about black men being the so-called no good black man, because we started to hear from working brothers. We started to hear from brothers who were making good money. We started to hear from guys in skilled trades. We started to hear from these black men who were talking about why they couldn't find a good black woman. And the stories that they were telling, what made them have the ring of truth was each one of them all talked about similar things as related to historically the feminist movement and the welfare state and the rise of the single parent household. And many talked about the family courts, and they talked about the breaking of the family. So the things they talked about gave us some understanding as related to why we were seeing so many Black women being single. And that's something that people don't want to hear anymore. What they want you to do is, again, head down this gynocentric route where we're hearing no good Black man, or we're seeing these Black men, these Pookies and Ray Rays on YouTube, standing outside the Arab store, talking all sorts of foolishness, or hearing guys cooking and roasting, or guys getting into back and forths. They want to see that kind of stuff on these platforms. And in order to get that stuff to the forefront, they need to push the intelligent, foundational Black Americans to the background so that people just won't see them. And that's why you see efforts to undermine people's subscription counts, undermine people's view counts, because it's not just me that has experienced this. I mean, I've heard from many other guys like Red Supreme who've talked about this. There's been an effort to keep other Blacks off of these platforms because these narratives, they don't want them out here, because they run, again, a counterpoint to what they want to push regarding Black people. And again, they have no problem if you're starting to talk about no good Black men, talking about swirling, talking about these Black men are garbage, this gender war stuff, or if you're sitting here talking some ignorance, no problem with that, or you're doing a twerk video, or you've got some other buffoon stuff like guys pouring alcohol on themselves and lighting themselves on fire, or guys just doing some stupid stuff like, again, malt liquor reviews. No problem with that type of stuff. In fact, that type of stuff people love seeing because it's entertaining to them. But when it comes down to Black content, they don't want the intelligent content on here because it refutes many narratives many people have on the left and the right about Black people. And the only what can Blacks do about this, Mr. J, is continue to support Black channels like mine and guys like Black Authority, Mr. Superboy, many others, Queasy 100. I mean, when you watch those channels, you learn about yourself, and continue to provide support to channels like this by donating to things like the Cash App and the Patreon, so we can continue to stay on the air and continue to provide you that counterpoint to what they're presenting in as related to trying to take over the mainstream media as related to the Black male image. So, and the Black female image as well. Again, they want to control those narratives. And if you continue to support the content providers like myself, we can continue to provide those counterpoints and continue to show you the truth about what people. Now, what can you do not to get censored? Again, it's a tightrope, but the whole thing is that they don't really want us on here. And the whole thing is that certain topics you can't really talk about. So some people take their content to other platforms. So it's hard to not get censored because they just can pull you at any time, because they want certain voices on here, like the ones I showed you, these so-called YouTube Black voices. They want these kind of people. And if you notice, they cut off the likes and dislikes on this video. And again, because they know that this thing would get a whole bunch of thumbs down, but they don't really want these type of voices on the platform. What they want are the clowns, the buffoons, the jokers, again, the fights, because that makes people feel secure about their world never having to deal with a Black person who is intelligent enough to compete, or a Black person with a vision to go out here and build something that can challenge their business institutions. So most of these people who are on these, they don't really want the Black voices on there, because those Black voices, one, represent people who refute the narrative, and two, Black people who can present direct competition to these platforms and many of the people's ideas about Black people. So they don't really like hearing from guys who can speak like me or guys who can articulate talking points. They don't really want to see those type of black guys. What they want to see is the guy with the sagging pants, the guy with the expensive talking about sneakers, the guy who is talking about the shrimp fried rice and Chinese chicken wings that he got from the Chinese restaurant. They want to hear from those kind of black people because they will only see black as quote unquote urban, and they don't really see black people as as having a rich and diverse culture and people who have a rich, diverse experience. They don't really see the real world as related to black people, and they don't like the idea of us broadcasting ourselves and presenting the real as related to black people and the real as related to black culture. Because if you start to present those pictures, it shatters people's narratives. And when you have people on an international platform like YouTube shattering those narratives, what's happening is you're changing the way people think. And people have said that to me, that I have really changed the way a lot of people have seen black people all over the world. And they have seen, and I've gotten views in countries like Canada. I've gotten views in the UK, gotten views in Australia, Japan. I mean, I've gotten views in South America, all over the world. I mean, people seeing a black man who's presenting a positive image of black manhood and black masculinity. And when you have people who see that, that really starts to scare a lot of these people who are in these mainstream media, because they know that the more people start to see more black men like myself speaking from their own words, that's some of the things that makes them scared, because that means that they can't control the narrative and they can't change the story to fit their ideas, because you have a living, breathing person presenting you with a counterpoint, and that living, breathing person is presenting you with the counterpoint that can't be challenged, because here you have a living, breathing person telling their truth, broadcasting themselves, and broadcasting their views. And this is something they don't want you to see. No, they want you to see, again, either the stereotypes or their shills, like your Roland Martins. I mean, they love having guys out here like that, because those guys are handpicked and paid for to say what they want to say and tell the masses what they want to hear. So they have no problem with a Roland Martin, because he just tells you what you want to hear. And he's just a parrot that just parrots back what people want said. So they have no problem with those kind of guys. And what they want to do is get more of those types on the platform. This is not something new to this platform. I mean, YouTube did try this before. They tried to pay some people to be their voices, but it bombed because people just did not support those channels. And I don't believe they'll support these YouTube black voices, because people can see through a shill. They can see through one of these yes men, and they can see the game as that's being played on them, like many people who were Star Wars fans saw the game that was being run on them with the Finn character that they did, where they didn't want to make him the stormtrooper who became a Jedi. No, what they wanted to do was give us this guy to use him to mislead us into believing, oh, he's going to be a major part of the movie. But then when people found out he was a bumbling, stumbling idiot, then people started to hate the character, because the character was breathing brand new life into old stereotypes and presenting the worst ideas about black people. Now, in contrast, your Ray Fisher, when he saw this going on, he called it out, but the foreign blacks didn't call it out, because they didn't understand how insidious American racism is. And they didn't understand that the American racist, he wants to go out here and what he does is he'll passively include you, but aggressively take shots at you. And if you can't identify the shots being taken at you, you'll sit there and go along, and you'll go along with somebody who is disrespecting you straight to your face. And that's what happened on the set of many of these Berlanti shows. A lot of the black actors were sitting there because they were not American blacks, taking the disrespect and never challenging anything. But the Ray Fisher, again, a foundational black American, shows us what happens when you have a foundational black American on the set of a show. And when you have a foundational group of foundational black Americans on a platform, you get them calling out racism that most people won't see. So your foundational black American, he will call out stuff that a foreign black will not call out, because a foreign black is not familiar with the culture of racism and white supremacy that has gone on in this country. So he'll sit there and he will wind up, they will do things like, oh, if you put on this dress, it'll just be a comedy bit. And he won't know that this is an effort to emasculate him and strip him of his manhood. And he'll go along with that, or he'll go along with something like in the case of John Boyega, the whole thing with Ray, where she was practically disrespecting him because he never experienced that and understood what this type of media means. So this is what happens when they're trying to control the media. They don't want the Black American to have a voice on the platform, because the Black American, when he has or she has a voice on the platform, is going to call out certain things, like I did in the recent Batwoman video, where I could see where the Batwoman character was, again, a disrespect towards Black women, because I understood that when they present Black women in certain platforms, they push certain stereotypes, and that's something that many others would not call out if they didn't know about it. So again, they don't want our voices on these platforms. They don't want our voices producing certain content. And again, it's all about controlling the narrative, because if you can control the narrative on these platforms, then you can get the masses to follow a certain group of ideas and a certain group of viewpoints, similar to what happened in the 1990s with all of those Black women who went and followed that narrative that Terry McMillan and Oprah Winfrey pushed about the no good Black man. Now, they pushed that narrative because the mainstream media had everybody following one set of voices, and those voices were reinforced on multiple platforms. And because those voices were reinforced on multiple platforms, what happened was we had everybody thinking the Black man was no good. We had people thinking the Black man was some sort of monster. And we had the idea of the Black brute reinforced in many minds, all because the media was controlled by a single group of people, and they wanted to push a certain narrative about Black men. So when you have a platform like YouTube promoting a counterpoint, what happens is they can't push that narrative, and they can't go out here and demonize a group of people like heterosexual Black men and present heterosexual Black men as an enemy, because you have the so-called enemy speaking on that platform, and you have that enemy speaking for himself. And because that person is presenting a counterpoint, that everything that you're presenting is being challenged and it's being debated in real time. So by what they would do in the 90s was keep the Black man off of these platforms, and that allowed them to be able to push these narratives. And that's what they want to do, is get back to pushing these narratives. And in some cases, they want to go out here and push narratives even towards these black men to get them back on this plantation and with this plantation mindset. And when I look at the narratives that they're trying to push to the black man, you have things like this high value man gimmick that they're trying to push. That's all part of trying to control the narrative on these social media platforms. What they want to do is get the black man off the roads of talking about black empowerment and talking about getting tangibles in exchange for their vote. That's something a lot of these people have a problem with, is the whole idea of black men talking about not only building businesses and participating in group economics, but also talking about working towards getting political power and getting tangibles in exchange for their vote, getting their black dollars back from the government, from the taxes they pay for, to improve the quality of life in their communities. They want to get the black man off that road, and what they want to do to get the black man off that road is push this narrative as related to what they call a high value man. But when you take a critical examination of the narrative of the high value man, it's all about getting the black man to stop focusing on building, stop focusing on black empowerment, and stop focusing on trying to get tangibles, and getting him focused on trying to fit into the mold of the Madison Avenue Hollywood idea of the so-called good black man. And your high value man is just another repackaging of the quote unquote good black man that Madison Avenue and Hollywood created back in the 90s, a social construct meant to get the black woman chasing this imaginary black man, spending resources to get with said black man, but never finding him because the standards constantly change, because whenever the standards are created, they move the goalpost. And what they want to do is get the black man following in the same footsteps, following down the same road, chasing this ideal of a high value man and aspiring to be this high value man. And what they want him to do is go out here as he's chasing this carrot. He stops focusing on things like black empowerment. He stops focusing on trying to support his fellow brothers and sisters through group economics. And he stops focusing on things like tangibles and getting tangibles in exchange for his vote. Many of the platforms that were actually going to help the black man, what they want to do is get the black man out here being a consumer, just like the black woman was during the Oprah days. And again, that's all about trying to take control of the narrative as related to black social media and keep black people from focusing from enriching themselves to enriching others and helping these other people get rich at our expense. Because when you have your black men going out here talking not about building a black-owned business or talking about going out here and buying stocks or buying property to build wealth, and they're sitting here talking about getting a designer suit, expensive shoes, expensive cologne, these are items that don't build wealth. They give you the appearance of looking fancy, but they don't build tangible wealth for yourself, and they don't build tangible wealth that can be passed on to your family. So this is about changing the narrative so that we can get the black man not focused on messages of empowerment, but get him focused on social messages that will have him out here, going out here chasing consumer goods and going out here then using said consumer goods to chase your black women. And when you have a black man out here who was out here chasing consumer goods and chasing the attention of black women, you have a male who is a follower. And as a follower, he is not really focused on developing the skills of leadership. So you have a male out here who has a gynocentric mind, and everything is all about the woman, but it's not about him learning how to empower himself as a man. So that's where the whole high value man, the new gimmick that's being pushed on Black social media, is all about, again, taking control of the narrative. And this is all about, again, taking the voices off the platform and pushing other voices to the forefront. And as you're pushing one group out of the platform and pushing others on and elevating them, you're allowing them an opportunity to be able to be heard by the masses, and then using those masses against themselves to go out here and not think about empowering themselves, but thinking about enriching others. Because what is a high value man going to do in a Black community? He's going to look good in clothes made by whites and non-Blacks and make them rich, but he's still going back to the same ghetto. So where does the value come from the high value man? That's the critical question I'd like to ask many who are pushing this narrative, not understanding how destructive it is to you as a Black man and as a Black woman, and can't see how this is about controlling the narrative on the platform to get Black men and Black women not focused on economic empowerment and not focused on concepts like group economics, or focused on building things for a Black community. I'm not focused on those things. No, they're focused on becoming this image, this ideal, but not focused on creating real tangibles towards becoming anybody who is valuable in the community. And again, this is all about controlling the narrative on these platforms like YouTube and places like Facebook and Twitter. They want Black people following in their footsteps in a monolithic way. They want Black people following down one road, and they want those Black people to continue following down these one roads, and because they want to control the narrative on these platforms, whether it be by pushing foreign Blacks to the forefront, marginalizing Black voices that are talking about things like economic and political empowerment, or pushing Black males who are out here who are promoting repackaged ideas like the good Black man, and going out here pushing the narrative of being a gynocentric male instead of being a man who follows God's natural order and is focused on doing the work of God and being a steward. And again, a steward, as I see it, would be focused on Black empowerment and focused on tangibles. He would not be sitting here talking about being a high value man or working to become a high value man, because that's just not something that any man, and every man's value to God is precious. And to say that one man has higher value than others, when you can see in the parable where Jesus talked about how he was hiring the workers, everybody got the same penny. I mean, that really shows us again how it's all about them trying to change the narrative as related to Black men and have them pushed back into this quest to chase women and become this good Black man. And again, that good Black man is unobtainable because the HR brick wall keeps the Black man from accessing the job market, and that HR brick wall keeps that Black man from being able to earn those types of dollars in a lot of cases, because it's hard for the Black man to access the job market. So the whole idea, again, is to have the Black man chasing a carrot on these platforms. They know that the Black man comes here, and what they want to do, again, is control the narrative and have the Black man following like out here, like these women did during the Oprah Winfrey days. And those women who were following during the Oprah Winfrey days, they were out here buying books and whatever Oprah Winfrey sold to them on their show. And what they want to do is have the black man out here buying all these products in an effort to become this imaginary construct. And again, that's all part of controlling the narrative on these social media platforms, because they know black men and black women are no longer watching TV. Black men and black women are no longer really watching movies like that. And they're listening to YouTubers out here. I mean, I have a lot of people who are saying that I've had an impact on them. And they know that if you have black people following others, people, that's detrimental to them, especially when there's talking points that don't fit their narrative. And what they want to do is have you have some black people out here following the narrative so that they can sell them products out here and have you out here buying said products and making their world smooth, because you're no threat to them. Because if you're out here buying these products and going out here and chasing the social currency, that means they can sit here and make money at your expense. So that's the whole thing, again, about controlling narratives, because again, when you control the media, you control the narrative, and you can influence the way people think. You can influence how they go out here and behave, and you can influence how they go out here and do things. And everything here as related to controlling the narrative is really about making money off these people, black people out here. Because if you have a group of masses who, again, are chasing a dream like the good black man for black women or the high value man for black men, then you can sell them lots of products, and those products can go out here and they can, while they may be detrimental to them, it's profitable for the business. And when you have black voices out here talking again about shopping at black owned stores, working with black owned businesses, and building black owned businesses, that's something that runs counter, because that keeps 97% of black dollars in the black community, and it allows people to invest 97% of dollars into black businesses, hire black people, and build other products and services that have black people focused on black communities, and not on going outside of the community to give resources to other people. We have 68 in the chat and 48 likes. Let's get the likes up. And I have a brand new comic book that's out on Amazon.com. No Good Deed is on Kindle. No Good Deed is on Kindle. And it's only 99 cents. So if you want to see what an SJS Direct comic looks like, you can pick up Esteem No Good Deed for 99 cents. So I really want to get the sales up on this book. Had a really strong month in January. We are at 57 sales of book paperbacks and ebooks, and I just need 3 more sales to hit 60 and hit a major milestone for sales. So I really would appreciate it if you guys would head over to Amazon to pick up Esteem No Good Deed, or one of the other books on the SJS Direct imprint, like Eternal Night, which is one of the stronger books in the SJS Direct imprint. It is one of the best-selling books, and again, it's all part of me trying to diversify the black book market, because we need to see more than these books talking about no good black men. We need to see books in genres like black horror, black fantasy, black science fiction, and that's what I provide on the SJS Direct imprint, with books like ISIS, the Main Event, which is a great book. John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which is an action-packed recent book of the John Haynes series, and Eternal Night, which had the best launch of an SJS Direct book so far. It had record sales in October and still continues to sell well. So there's a lot of great books that show you, again, diverse images of Black people and the Black experience on the SJS Direct imprint. Books we don't, and stories we don't usually get from mainstream platforms, because we don't get many Black horror stories or Black fantasy stories. And whenever we try to get them out, there's efforts to bury those kind of stories. After the success of Black Panther, we've seen an effort to try to make it where we can't get any Black fantasy stories. After they try to use that Ava DuVernay movie, A Wrinkle in Time, to say, oh, there's no audience for Black fantasy. And the effort, again, passive aggressively, to say there's no audience because of Batwoman's failure. They use things like this to push narratives so that they won't have to promote certain ideas about Black people, because the only ideas they want you to see about Black people are the hood. They want you to see the streets. They want you to see gangs and drugs, but that's never been the big picture as related to Black people. And the only way we get the full picture of Black people is through Black content creators. And that's, again, why it's so important to support Black content creators, because we are presenting a counterpoint to the mainstream media and its shills, which try to go out of their way to push narratives about Black men and Black women that aren't true, and try to demonize both Black men and Black women. So you have, again, on these platforms, a war going on, and it is a war for your mind. And the war for your mind is all about trying to get you to think a certain way, and they want you to think a certain way about yourself. So they don't want you to think positively about yourself. They don't want your kids to think positively about themselves. They don't really want you to think positively about who you are and say, you know, I can go out here and be on the same level as a white or a non-Black person. No, they want you to see images and narratives that put you at the bottom, like that whole twerking in Washington, which was an embarrassment. Or they want you to see some other sorts of clown images where we're not seeing real Black manhood, real Black masculinity, or Black womanhood, or Black womanhood and femininity. They don't want you to see these types of images, and taking those voices off the platform allows them to push these narratives about Black people and push those narratives to the forefront. And we have to, again, continue to support many of these YouTubers like myself and many others, because we're trying to present that balanced, humanized image of Black people that most people don't ever want to talk about, and you never get to really see on your TV shows, your movies. I mean, these Black bootlicks they put up in front of you, a lot of them, they're not really about trying to present a positive image. They just want to be empty symbols. They want to have the flash of being an image, but they don't want to have the substance that allows us to see the humanity of Black people and see a positive picture that inspires others to go out here and do and be better people. So I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and got 62 in the chat. And if 62 people went out and picked up one of the books on the SJS Direct imprint, it would turn one of my best months into a blockbuster month. So I would really appreciate if you pick up one of my books. And I have, again, a diverse catalog filled with a lot of great books in fantasy, science fiction. I have some romance. I even have some nonfiction, like my Man Crisis. So I have a lot of great books out here, and I would really appreciate it if you guys would go out here and pick up one of those books, because people say that they've been inspired by a lot of my work, and I really want to get it out here. And because one of my missions was to promote positive images of Black people in my stories, and I really want to see positive narratives being presented. And again, that's why I'm pushing back against things like controlling the narrative of Black YouTube, because once other people who are whites and non-Blacks get a hold of our narrative and start telling our stories, that's when our voices get silenced, and that's when we get a minstrel show. And if we really want to stop that on a platform that says broadcast yourself, we have to continue to speak, we have to continue to share, and we have to continue supporting and letting more people know about the channel. Now, I've had people say that I should have, more than 12,000 subscribers. I should have 20, 30,000 subscribers. And again, the only way that can happen is if you guys go out here and tell more people about the channel and share more about the channel and share more about the books. That's how we get the channel bigger. That's how we expand the channel. And that's how I'm able to go out here and be able to offer you different new products, like what I'm just doing with the No Good Deed comic. I want to go out here and again reach larger audiences by not just doing books, but also going out here and producing comic books and graphic novels. So I really want to go out here again and expand the audience, expand the diversity of the image of Black people, present positive images of Black people, balanced images, humanized images, because it's very important that we start taking control of our image, start taking control of our narratives, and start telling our own stories. And they don't want us to do this on YouTube because they see the power that we've had over the last 2 decades or so, where you have Black people now talking about group economics. You now have Black people talking about Black empowerment more and more. And you have more Black people talking about taking political power. You have Black people talking about getting tangibles. And this scares a lot of people because they are used to feeding off the Black community. And when they see Black people saying that they are now going to stop allowing people to feed off them, it scares them. So this is something that really scares a lot of people. And that's why they want to go out here and import replacements for Black people and have them controlling the narrative and the voices. And they also want to bring in others who are in the community to push gynocentric narratives like the high value man to us. And well, Z-Ken, one of the reasons why I do hire artists is because a lot of comic artists out there are struggling, and I want to be able to help whoever I can, because this industry was the thing that helped me learn how to read. So I go out here and hire artists because I want them to be able to make a living, and I also want them to get some exposure. So I would invest in Procreate and Apple Pencil, but I would only to use it for a concept. But I usually like putting dollars in artists' hands so that they can continue pursuing their work and their projects and be able to, continue to make a living in this business. Because I know when you're freelance, it's hard to get work. And sometimes you have lean months. And sometimes a guy coming in with a project saying, hey, I got this cover for you. If you do this for me, it can practically be the thing that pays their bills. And with COVID, a lot of comic artists, they're not able to get to the cons. So one of the reasons why I invest in artists, because I really want to help these creators and keep those dollars circulating in the Black community and the comic book and artist community, because I know how hard it is for an artist when you're trying to get work. I mean, sometimes you might have a hot period where you're getting a lot of commissions, and then you have a slow period where the money is not there. And that's one of the reasons I go out and try to support comic artists, because 1, you're getting work, and then 2, you're getting a credit because when I go on put guys like Mike Williams and Bill Walko's things on Amazon, I give them illustrator credits, and those illustrator credits can be used to get other jobs and be able to book other gigs. And when you have legit things on Amazon where a guy can just type in your name and do a Google search, and they're saying, oh, that was your cover, then you're going to be able to book other gigs. So when you have an artist and they can say, oh, he got a cover, that's a major thing when you get a cover, because that's the first thing people see. For example, when they see Eastine Blast from the Past, it's like, this is the first thing you see representing the book. So, or you see John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. This is the first thing you see. And getting a cover, that's a major credit for an artist. So that's why I go out and hire artists and put them on my books, because comic books were the way I learned how to read, and comic books transformed my life. And I want to give back to the industry that practically helped me learn how to read. And that's one of the reasons why I put comic artists on many of my books. Now, it'd be cheaper for me to go out here and, use stock photos like I did for Eternal Night. But I just look back at, I want to reach back to many of the people in the comic book industry. And again, guys like Mike Williams produce fantastic original pieces, like this Man with Nothing to Lose cover, or this Easting Blast from the Past that Bill Walko has done. And I like having a special, unique image on my books. I think it really shows how much unique and distinct the book is. So that's one of the reasons why I hire comic artists. It means a lot to me. And I think readers would love seeing original art on a book cover. So I would rather give you an original image. And that's, again, something I like to do. But I could use Apple pencils and stuff like that for concepts. But I just like to hire comic artists, because comic artists, they really need the work. And with the industry in the bad state that it is, you whatever work you get, it's just something you really appreciate, because DC right now is in a state of flux. Marvel is struggling. So if I can come out here and help somebody, I'll be glad to do it. But I love putting comic book art on my books, like Isis and John Haynes and Easting. And if I can, I would put it on other books, but it's just something I like to do. And it's, again, a way that I want to give back to the industry that practically taught me how to read, and I've been a part of for over 30 years. So I really want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I'm hoping you'll be there for next week's stream. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. 60 in the chat, 59 in the chat. But I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream. Have a good night and have a great weekend.